Right. So continuing there with our Android tablets, the important thing that they came up with the first iPhone and with all Android phones is this screen. And the screen was a really, really ingenious idea. It's called a touch screen for obvious reasons. We use our finger to touch it. And that was an incredibly brilliant idea, because if you remember before, with your flip phone, you needed everything you needed to press buttons. And they were tiny little buttons. It wasn't that easy to do, especially as we get older. The laptop, you can't do anything unless you can use the keyboard. The interesting thing, I remember I used to have a BlackBerry phone, and they were the coolest phones of all, the BlackBerry. And suddenly the iPhone came out, and then the Android phone, no keyboard at all. And you think, well, how do we communicate with this device if we don't have a keyboard? And so the clever thing that they came up with was a screen called a touch screen. So it's a simple glass screen. It's a very hard, special glass, doesn't break easily. But behind the glass is a set of electronic circuits that can actually sense the electrical field in your finger. We all have a tiny electrical field because our bodies run on electricity. So it's a very tiny field, very, very small. If I touch you, you touch yourself. You don't get a shock. It's a very tiny, very small current. But this thing can actually sense it. So when my finger is on the screen, the device itself will know if my finger is over here, or my finger is over there, or my finger is somewhere else, right? It will be able to detect that very easily. We'll talk more about that, of why that's a clever idea. They then also came up with this idea of what they call icons, right? So icons are these little pictures, each of which does something, right? I don't know why they call them icons. Probably a better word is what we use today is called an app. So these are apps or icons, but they're apps. And each of these apps does one thing, and it does it very well. So the app that says phone, basically that's all it does. It makes phone calls, right? You wouldn't use the phone app to type a Word document, right? That would be a different app entirely. The phone app is the one that makes phone calls, right? You wouldn't use that to set an alarm for yourself. That would be a different app, which is called clock, right? And so it goes. So there's an app here called, if you can see it at the bottom, called camera. And we know if we just touch that gently at that point on the screen, the camera will pop up and say, what do you want to do? Do you want to use the front camera or the back camera, whatever? But if I wanted to send email, here's one that says email. And if I click this one, it will allow me to send email, but not use the phone. So we can use any of them we like in any order we like. We don't need to be taught any computer instructions on how to make this thing work. The interesting thing too is the device you have, your tablet, in this case, my tablet, or your tablet, or your phone, knows where it is in space. It knows whether it's this way or that way. And so if you turn it sideways, in most cases, not all, but most cases, it will automatically swing around. So sometimes if something is not easy to read this way, I just turn it sideways like that, and it's easier to read because it's a little narrower, but it's wider. You sometimes might have a picture that is not so easy to read on the phone, and it kind of gets chopped off, but if you swing it around, and we call this landscape mode. So the other one is normal mode, is called portrait mode, this way, and this way is called landscape mode, right? And you don't have to do anything in most cases. The device will detect automatically where you are in space, and you can see here it's just readjusted all the icon to go the other way. Okay, so we talk about the touch screen. The tablet has virtually no buttons. It just has the on-off button and the volume button and so forth. But otherwise, everything else is pretty much done on the screen. That's it. Here's your screen. This is your keyboard. This is your connection. This allows you to talk to the device, all using your finger and the screen. And it's amazing. It was an amazingly clever idea. You know, until this idea came out of the touch screen, really only adults could use phones. You know, you would not have a 2-year-old child who could have used a BlackBerry in the old days. You know, they could play with it and mess with it, but it was kind of hard to get, you know, to be able to do things. And yeah, today I watch my grandchildren, 2 years old, who can pick up their parents' phone they know which button it is to press is the phone, and they know the first number that comes up is my number. And sometimes suddenly my phone rings and it's my, 3 or 4 year old grandchild who can, can't even fully speak yet, and certainly is not at school, but is able to use the device and make phone calls and stuff like that. The danger, of course, is that they could accidentally be getting to Amazon and running up charges with a credit card, but that's another story. It just shows how easy it is to use. So I just want to mention then the various things you can do on the screen. So the one I've already spoken about is the tap. So you gently press on the picture, which is an icon or an app, and that's similar to a mouse click. So on my laptop, I have a mouse, and I have to click the mouse for it to do things. On our phone or our tablet, we just press the icon. So I open my tablet, and here are all the icons, exactly what you see there. And if I press the icon that says camera, then bingo, and the camera opens up and I can now take pictures if I so desire, right? And that all requires is a tap. And don't hold it down, just touch it. The long press, if you hold your finger down on an icon, you hold it and you keep your finger there for 2 or 3 seconds, just, we call it a long press, but it's only a few seconds, then you will be able to move the icons around. So you may not like the order in which the icons are on the screen. And it's very, very simple to be able to move them. You just hold it down, and then then the icon sort of becomes alive. And if you move your finger now while holding it down, that will allow you to put the icon, the app, in a different place on the screen. So you can arrange them any way you like, by color or alphabetically or whatever you want. And I'll show you later, but I've got some, you notice I haven't got a lot of apps, a lot of icons on my screen. It's not very cluttered. But what I have got where my finger is over here is this one right next to my finger. It's an icon labeled Google. And basically it's got all the Google apps in one little icon. It's kind of like I put them in a box. So if I touch the Google app, if I touch the Google icon, this icon here, then, come on, the box opens up and you can see there's actually about 10 different apps inside. So instead of having your screen cluttered with apps and all over the show, and first of all, I arrange them in the order that I want. I like to have a particular order. I can arrange them. And then instead of having 10 icons on the screen, I'll take the ones that are the same, perhaps all my games or perhaps all my Google apps, and I put them into one little box. And I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So that's a very useful trick. Then we have the swipe, right? The swipe is you put your finger in your space and you move quickly left or right, up or down, okay? So on your tablet, if you swipe from the top to the bottom, so starting up here, if I swipe down, then, come on. Come on. A little menu will open up. You can see that all I did was I swiped down, and that menu allows me to see other things in the computer. What volume I've got it set to, what level of battery I've got left. A lot of useful stuff comes, and that works on the phone in exactly the same way. So I'll pull down from the top on the phone. You can see a whole menu is opened up there. That's got, what messages I've got, and whether I've got a cell phone signal, whether I've got a Wi-Fi signal, all that useful stuff is there. And then if I just hit the home button again, it goes right back to the main screen. So you can swipe to the right and you can swipe to the left. When you're reading books, for example, and you want to change the page, you swipe from right to left. That's like flipping the page over, what you would do with a book. And the page flips over in exactly the same way. So that's useful to know. The drag that I've already really spoken about it, is a combination of a long press and a swipe. So you hold it, and now you can drag the app, you can move the app, you can move the icons around. And then the one that I like, called pinch or spread, exactly the same. If you put two fingers on the screen like this and bring them together on the screen, it will make things smaller. And if you do that, you spread, it will make things bigger, right? So if you're looking at something that's a little bit small, you can make it bigger or smaller. And here's a really good idea. You know, if there's something you can't read easily, let's say it's fine print, you know, sometimes in the newspaper or a magazine under a picture, they print the details of the picture, who's in it and blah, 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 in quite small print. And for our eyes, sometimes it's not so easy, right? Here's a useful trick. Or another thing that's classic is if you have a pill container, you have medication, you have a pill container, it's often literally impossible to read it because it's so small and it's curved as well. What I do is open your camera, focus your camera on it, and then do this with a picture, and the picture will get bigger. And so now when you want to read that fine print, it becomes easy to do. I use that all the time. Very, very useful. So look at that. You can point at the magazine, point the camera at the magazine, and then make it bigger, and you'll be able to read that fine print, or point it at your pill bottle or your pill container and make it bigger, and you can read all that fine print about how often you should take the medication and so on. Pretty useful, okay? So they're also on your device. There are three things that are useful at the bottom of the screen. So again, if you look at the screen, and you can see them right at the bottom here. It's probably a little difficult to see, but on the left, you can see it on the main screen now. On the left is a little icon that's over here on the left side of the screen that looks like two squares, right? And this one, if we touch that, will show you all the recent apps that you've used, right? So whatever apps you've used recently will pop up, right? And so here you can see you get an overlay set of apps, and you can then go back to any app that you've used recently. It just shows you them stacked up like a stack of papers. So instead of trying to find where the heck was I, you know, when I was looking at that Amazon stuff and it seems to have disappeared and I got to start again, just hit that little button and you'll see all of your apps. There will be, there's the browser with Amazon open, and you can touch it and bingo, it goes right back to it. It's like a stack of papers on your desk. In the middle, we've got the usual, you've got the big button in the middle, which on some devices is actually an actual button, like here on an older device. This tablet's a couple of years old, or it would be on the phone. It's now a virtual button. You can see it right here. It looks exactly the same, like a little circle. And if you touch that, it will allow you to go home. That's called the home button. And that will take you, really, I said, turn the tablet on and off. It will close the screen out, but really it's not on and off. It's your home button. It takes you back to the beginning. And then the one on the right usually looks like an arrow like this, a sort of curly arrow. And that takes you back to the most recent app that you used. So if I press that, whatever apps I was using, I go to, let's say I'm looking at Amazon, or I'm looking at something on Amazon. I then swap over and I go and do some emails. Now I want to get back to Amazon. Yeah, well, you can either use this button here, and you'll see that, you know, Amazon was one of my recent apps, or just press this button and it goes right back to the most recent one you did. So the good news is, you know, these devices are very, very flexible indeed, but most people don't know how easy it is to jump between apps, jump forward, jump backward. It's all there for you. So this shows you all of the apps that you were running, and you can just point at one of them, touch it, and it comes back to life. This one just goes back one. It says whatever you were doing before, go back to it, and it does it automatically. This one, the middle button, the home button really, is the most useful button. And so I can't emphasize enough, not everybody knows it. If you do, then pardon me repeating it, but wherever you are, if you get lost, you're stuck in something, I don't know, how do I get out of here? Which sometimes happens with new apps, or we forget how to get out of it. All you have to do is hit this button here, And like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, when she clicked the ruby slippers, she went home to Kansas, if you remember. You know, click the ruby slippers. These are your ruby slippers. Wherever you are, you don't know how to get out of it. You're completely confused. Just press the home button and bingo, you come back to the main home screen, the screen here with all the icons on. You'll always come back to that screen, or on your phone, exactly the same thing. You'll come back to, you know, your familiar home screen. So, you know, don't ever be scared of using your phone or your tablet, because A, you can't hurt yourself. It's not like when you first drove your car and you could, you know, accidentally drive into a tree or have an accident with another car because you were inexperienced. Here, you can't hurt yourself at all. If you get completely lost or you don't know what you're doing after a while, and it happens to all of us, it happens to me too. Sometimes I just can't remember how to, you know, get out of this thing. Just hit the home button and like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, you go straight home. Okay, now we'll talk about some of the apps. I'm going to just look at a couple of the main apps before we get deeper into the phone. Are there any questions, by the way, up to this point? That's probably nothing very exciting that I've told you so far, but I've covered it just so that we don't leave anything out. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to move on. The app that we don't use very often, and most people don't even pretty much know that it's there, is this one up here in the top right-hand corner that looks like a gear wheel, right? It's either like this, light blue on dark, or on my tablet here, it's this one over there, right? Which is exactly the same, but it's a white wheel on a blue background. So it's really a wheel. It looks like a wheel. And they call that the settings button. I think settings is a really stupid name. I don't know what settings actually mean. That should be called the Android button. Because when you press this app here, this button, this virtual button on your screen, you're essentially looking at, or now talking to Android, to the operating system. Now, the good news is you don't need to do that very often. Just like you don't need to know how your car works, but you do need to know where to put oil and gas in the car. So those are really specific functions, you know, very technical, related to the car, but not related to actual driving. And that's pretty much all we need on a car is where do we put oil in if we're running out of oil, and where do we put gasoline in when we run out of gas. Same here. You talk to the operating system, not very often, but this is the most useful button because it allows you to customize things and make this whole thing look exactly the way you want. So I'm going to look at it on my phone. So I press the settings button on my phone, and you get a long list like this. It's you can just see it's a long list. We'll talk about this list. It looks slightly different on the tablets, where we have a long list on the side. There's a long list down the the left-hand side, and then there's a long list down the left-hand side, and then there's a descriptive part, so the screen's divided in two. The phone doesn't do that because it doesn't have enough real estate, doesn't have enough space. So it shows you the settings list, and then when you choose a particular setting, and we'll talk about them, then something opens up. So I'm going to choose the top one, which says connections. I'm going to press it, and a whole new set of things opens up. On the tablet, you will be able to see those individual settings on the right with all the details on the same screen, just because it's got more space. So the first option, which is usually called connections, is very useful, right? This is the one that allows you to connect to the internet, right? And to set up Bluetooth, which we'll talk about later. Without an internet connection, you can't do much on a tablet or a phone except make calls. In fact, this particular tablet, I can't even make phone calls on it. It doesn't have a phone chip in it. You can buy them with chips. But on this guy, without the internet, you know, I can pretty much not do anything except make phone calls. So we know that connections allows us to connect to Wi-Fi. And so you can see quite clearly here, the top entry, it says Wi-Fi, right? Wi-Fi, right up here, first one. And if I click on that, it will show me all the Wi-Fi that it can see. It can see multiple Wi-Fi networks around. Usually the only one you're interested is at your home, or you come to my house, you want to get into my one, or you come to the Benson Center, you want to get onto the Benson Center, the Wi-Fi. You would choose the appropriate connection. You just look at somebody has to tell you what the name of the connection is. So people give it funny names. It may just say Benson, something like that, or it may have some kind of funny name, and you just touch it and it connects you to the Wi-Fi and you're done. Most Wi-Fis today require a password. So if there's a password, which you would use on your own Wi-Fi, because you don't want people just to be freeloading and using your Wi-Fi, it'll ask you a password and you just key it in. A virtual keyboard will open up. So here you can see the virtual keyboard is open, and I will use that to type in the password. You see it says there, password. It's asking me for the password, right? And if I don't know the password, it's not going to allow me to connect. The good news is Android remembers all your passwords once you've entered it. So if you come to my house, for example, or you go to the Benson Center and you connect to the Wi-Fi, and then you go home and connect back to your own Wi-Fi, the next time you come to my house or the Benson Center, your phone or your tablet will remember that password. You don't have to do it again, which is pretty clever. Only once do you ever have to enter the password, unless, of course, at the Benson Center or I at my house have changed the passwords. But other than that, it's always going to remember it, which is pretty useful. Okay. Some more things about the screen. As we said, this is the home screen. Now, the way most of them look is a variation on this, but it'll show you the time and the date, right? And usually it'll show you the weather in your location. Now you might say, well, what happens if I go somewhere else? In fact, I'm not in Atlanta right now, I'm in New York. If I look at my phone, it'll show me the temperature in New York. Say, well, how does it know that? And the interesting thing is that it does, because through the internet, it detects what time zone you're in, right? And from the time zone and your location, it will then be able to give you, in this case, very specifically, Sandy Springs, but it could be New York or Los Angeles or South Atlanta or North Atlanta, Alpharetta. It would know where you are and give you the appropriate weather. And if in fact, if you change time zones, if you go into the central time zone, you go to the mountain time zone, the time will automatically change. We'll go forward or backward 1 hour. Or if you go to England, it will go forward 5 hours and so on. It's really clever, it does that automatically. So here are icons, the various icons, we've spoken about it. Here's the settings icon. Here's the little box that I created called Google. And you can see it's got a lot of other tiny little icons in it. It's got 8 there, in fact, right? So instead of wasting my 8 on my screen, I put them all in the same box, right? And now if I touch this icon, as I showed you, it opens up, and now I can choose Gmail or directions if I'm driving my car or whatever, right? So that's pretty useful. And I'll show you how to do that. And then all of the Google Android operating systems now always have a bar, this white bar in the middle, and that's a very useful thing. It's called the search bar, right? The search bar, and the search bar allows you to do exactly that. You can look for things. You can look for files. You can look for information on the internet. You can say, what time is it now in London? Let's say I've got to make a phone call to a family member in England, and I can't remember it's 5 hours or 6 hours. You could actually in here literally type in English, what is the time now in London? Or, what is the population of the United States? Or who is the president of the United States? Or who is the prime minister of England? Or almost anything that you can think of in English, you can type in here, and our friend Google will always name with those colors. You can see it's got the 4 colors, blue, yellow, red, and green as the 4 Google colors. And all of the Google icons, you can't really see it here, they all use those same 4 colors, but they have different shapes. Some are triangles, some are circle. Yeah, it's just the word Google. And if you then press the enter key, Google will automatically go out to the internet and come back and answer your question. Even cleverer now, that's come out in the last few years, there's a little microphone on the right-hand side, right? So if you touch the microphone, you can now speak your command. You can now, like I put here, let your tongue do the walking, not even let your fingers do the walking. And so if you press that little icon, and there's another way to do it, which I'll tell you about in a future session. If you press that little microphone, you can now speak and say, who won the presidential election in 1964? Who was the president in 1964? Who won the World Series in 1980? I'm having an argument with somebody, I say it was the Braves and he says it was the New York Yankees. Well, now we've got instant access to all of that information. You literally could just press this little icon and say, who won the World Series in 1984, whatever, and it'll come back and it'll tell you, no, it wasn't the Braves, it was the Yankees or whatever. Right? Something also useful to know here is this bottom row of icons is slightly different to all the rest. So you can see my phone, and the bottom row is right over there. They sit below the search bar. Some versions of Android have got the search bar in the middle. Some have got them at the bottom there. And the only difference between that row of icons and all the rest is those are my favorites. Those are the things that I use a lot. So over there, I've got my phone and my calendar and email and so forth, right? Those are the things that I use all of it. Now, one thing I didn't mention to you is you actually have more than one screen. So although you can see the screen's pretty full, if you put your finger on the screen and swipe to the left, you turn the page. There's another page you can imagine sitting over here. So if I do that on the screen, you can see the page switches and I got some more apps there and I can do it one more time and I can do it one more time. The last one's completely empty. But I think you got, 4 screens. You can put 3 or 4 screens, you put as many icons as you like. So I have some icons on the second screen. Those are ones that I don't use that often. Maybe, like Starbucks. I've got my Starbucks app there. I don't go into Starbucks every single day. So when I do, I just have to flip. Whereas the first one's got all the stuff that I use every day, email and phone and calendar and a camera and stuff like that. Right? So you can use, you've got multiple there. And the interesting thing is the ability to be able to just press that button and you can see it clearly on my screen here, the little microphone button right there. And if I press that microphone button, then Google will be able to allow me to search by whatever I speak. In fact, my one now, this is a fairly new phone. It's got an extra little thing there. You can see the camera, right? So in fact, I can press that and although I keep my camera icon on the screen, if I press that, my camera will open automatically, right? And there it is, the camera open. I just pressed the camera open. Now, how do I get back to my original home screen? I just press the home button down there and bingo, I'm back home like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Okay, so just a little bit more about apps and then we'll break until next week. So what is an app? Okay, so an app was a very clever idea that came out that even Apple didn't understand how powerful this was going to become. So an app is an application program. It's a program, a piece of software that somebody wrote that does one or more specific functions, usually one. It does one thing and it does it really well. In the old days, before we had icons, you needed to know all kinds of complicated computer language to do this or do that or do the other, right? Now you don't need to know any language at all. And like I said, 4-year-old children can do it, 3-year-old kids can do it as well. You just press a button, right? So Android, like Apple, comes with a whole bunch of standard apps, your clock, your camera, email and stuff like that, right? Those are automatic, right? But then the brilliant idea came that both Apple and Google decided to do was to say, wait a minute, we and Apple or we Google with Android, we provided these basic apps, the clock, the camera, email and so forth. But why don't we open it to everybody? Anybody out there who is capable of doing it can write their own apps. And the great thing then is they created Google created what they call the Google Play Store. Now, it's not really a store, right? They called it Play because mainly in the early days it had games. But now it has much, much more than games. It's not really a store. It's not a store at Perimeter Mall or anything like that. It's just a website. But by pressing this icon down here in the Google apps, you can see it's got the Google 4 colors, red, blue, green, and yellow, but it's a little triangle. You press that, it takes you instantly to the Play Store. And now you can find games, email systems, purchasing. You can buy stuff like Amazon. You can get books on Kindle, banking, GPS directions. You know, we know now you can get directions with your car rides. You can call Uber and Lyft. Travel, you can book on Delta, United Airlines, or Greyhound Bus. They all have apps. And simply by pressing the Delta app, Delta pops up and it says, what do you want to do? You want to book a ticket? I can book a ticket, or I can check whether a flight is coming in on time, or what flights they've got for next Thursday going to, you know, Los Angeles, or whatever I want. Uber, press the button that says, where do you want to go? I type in, I want to go to Atlanta Airport. It's clever enough, I don't even have to put the address in. Atlanta Airport says, I know where that is, and it will take you there. Or Perimeter Mall, right? And even things like Benson, if you type in Benson Center, 99 times out of 100, it'll say, I know where that is, and it'll take you to the appropriate place. Things it doesn't know where your doctor is, you might have to say, I want to go to, you know, 1234 Peachtree Road, and it'll take you, give you the directions to 1234 Peachtree Road. So just to end off, here are some, you know, well-known icons. Obviously, this one we know, Amazon. So you think, why have we got an icon for Amazon? Because, you know, I can get to Amazon through my browser. We're going to talk about browsers next time. But instead of typing Amazon.com into the browser, I've got an app. You just touch that button and bingo, you're right there. It's exactly the same, but it's quicker. But there's another reason for having, or why Amazon would like to give you this free app. You get this on the App Store, and it's completely free, and it installs itself automatically with that little picture. The reason is that Amazon obviously would much prefer you to press their icon than to use your browser, when you can also go and compare prices at Walmart.com or Target.com or BestBuy.com. But if you're using the Amazon app or the Best Buy app or the Target app or the Walmart app, they've all got their apps, and you can choose your favorite. Then you are going to basically shop at that app. You know, Uber's got an app, and they know if you press that button, you're not using Lyft. You know, they're kind of locking you in, and Lyft's exactly the same thing. Delta's app says you're gonna, you know, it makes you want to book tickets on Delta and not on Southwest. But Southwest also has an app, so you can choose the apps you want. Kindle, this is a brilliant idea. Amazon came out with the idea of the Kindle book reader about 15 years ago, 20 years ago now, where you could read electronic books. But then the smart software guy says, hey, we can write the same software, and that runs on a phone, right? So on my phone, you can see the Kindle app right over here. The little boy sitting reading a book, right? And it's pretty much the same as this here, where it says Kindle. Is just a little smaller. And if I press that, it'll open my Kindle library. And if I press this one, it'll open the Kindle library. Because instead of having a Kindle reader, which Amazon used to sell, the clever guys wrote software for it. And so your tablet or your phone or your Windows computer thinks it's a Kindle reader. This one up here, you probably recognize that this is what's on the tailplane of all Delta planes. So if I click this, up comes Delta, and it lets me book flights and check what time flights are coming in, or whether my flight's going to be late or not, all that kind of stuff. This one is Bank of America. So they have a very nice app for all people who have accounts with Bank of America. But if you have an account with SunTrust or other banks, they all have their app too, and you can do all the banking stuff. What's interesting about apps like Amazon and Delta is Delta goes both ways. So I can press the app to book a ticket, but if a flight's going to be delayed, Delta sends me an email, right? Or if I book a ticket, Delta will email me the details of the ticket, right? So that I can just, at security, just show them my phone, and there will be, you know, or when I board the plane, I'll have it on my phone instead of having a piece of paper. Same with Bank of America. They will send me updates, right? Somebody, an unusual device has access to your account. Let's say I buy a new phone. The first time I go to it, the Bank of America is going to know, wait a minute, we haven't seen this phone before from Jeff. It'll send me an email saying, did you connect with a new Samsung phone? That's exactly what happened when I got my new phone. It'll say yes, and then it's happy, or no, maybe it's, some guy trying to, get to my $10 million in my bank account. Yeah, right. Okay, this one we all know is Facebook. This is Lyft or Uber, very similar. If I press this button, Lyft will allow me to get a driver to come and take me to the airport or wherever I want to go. And here is our friend, the Play Store, which has literally, I say, tens of thousands of apps. I think today it's more like hundreds of thousands or even millions of apps. And I'll also show you, how do you find anything in a million apps? I'll show you how we do that next time. Okay, so I think we're pretty much done. We're a few minutes over. If you want to ask any questions, I will stay online for a couple more minutes. If not, I will see you next week, same station, same time, same station. Take care. Have a great weekend. Bye.